All right, welcome back. So in the last video, we were talking about the First Punic War and how Rome was able to out-adapt the Carthaginians when it comes down to it, and is now considered a major Mediterranean power. Well, in this war, the Second Punic War is where you could say, like, put the Star Wars analogy to it, like the Empire Strikes Back type thing. Carthage comes back at Rome and comes at them hardcore. So, and it's all through the efforts of a guy named Hannibal, the son of that general I talked about in the last video. I keep messing up the names, Hamilcar, Hasdrubal. Anyways, I want to say it's Hamilcar. I think I should have looked this up between doing the two videos, and I didn't. So I'll leave this to you. You can look it up and see which name is correct for which. You have the father and two sons, basically, but the main guy really is Hannibal. Hannibal being one of the greatest people ever to live in human history type stuff, just for the feats they did. Doesn't necessarily win in the end, but holy cow, is it fun to read his stories, or the stories about him and what happens between him and Rome. Anyways, this is one of those stories where, like, you just can't help rooting for the guy. It's like, maybe you can do it, maybe you can do it. If this was like a fictional story. So, anyways, where was I? So, Carthage. Take a look at that map. Notice how much bigger Carthage is in that map versus the previous map. Meaning that Carthage realizes they need to adapt a bit. We're like, all right, instead of just having our trading ports and spheres of influence, we need to have actually more domination and access to troops and wealth and things like that, especially now that we lost access to places like Sicily and Sardinia to the Romans. And in their minds always looms this idea like, we're going to get back at them. We are going to get back at the Romans at some point. And the guy that wants to get back at them more than anything else is that one general. Again, I'm just going to go with Hamilcar. I could be wrong with this one. But Hamilcar is just like, I want to end them. And now I keep thinking it might be Hasdrubal. Anyways. God, I need to look this up. So, but I don't want to end the video either. So, now, Hannibal, the son of Hamilcar, is actually over in Spain, kind of expanding the empire of Carthage into Spain. Back then it's not really called Spain. That area is called the Iberian Peninsula. But I'm just using the name Spain because that's what you and I know that area is as. Basically this area over here. That's where he's at. And he's doing a pretty good job of expanding stuff. And his entire mindset is like, when Hannibal's dad dies, Hamilcar, I think, dies, he's like, son, please fulfill my wish to destroy Rome. I want you to end Rome. He's like, yes, father, I will. I will end Rome. So, but he builds up and builds up and builds up until he's finally able to say, okay, now I think I do it. I think I can do it now. Rome will be a tough enemy, but I think I got him. So once he gets that large enough army ready, along with a lot of war elephants, by the way, Hannibal's known for his war elephants, he declares war on Rome. And how he does this is, again, just kind of giving the pretext, just saying, all right, I'm going to come up with a way to just say how we're going to do this. There's a city here called Saguntum. I can't see it very well, and I got my pointer on it, but a little city right there called Saguntum that has Roman protection, meaning the Romans told the people of Saguntum, if Carthage ever comes after you, we'll go after Carthage for you. Basically, we'll protect you from them. So Hannibal thinks, well, best way to get the Romans to declare war on me is to go after Saguntum. So he goes after Saguntum. And just, well, I don't know, he beats them. He definitely takes them out. The Romans aren't able to get there in time. But of course the Romans hear about this. How dare you, we declare war. So the Second Punic War is on because of the attack on Saguntum. And so the Romans get a fleet together and an army together, and they start sailing over to Spain to deal with Hannibal, thinking the battle's going to be over there. The battle's going to be in Spain. Well, that was part of the tactic Hannibal's using. He wants the Romans to kind of draw out some of their best armies and things like that and bring it over to Spain, because he then instead starts walking across southern Gaul, crosses the Alps, and then into Italy. All this with his elephants and everything. By the way, a lot of those elephants do not make it through the Alps mountains. Elephants with mountains don't go so well. Lots of elephants die, but he does get through there with some. But he also gains a lot of allies. Now, there actually were a lot of tribes in those areas that would attack him, even in the mountains, like on these mountain passes, he'd get attacked by some of these Gallic tribes. In other cases, the Gauls that actually would join him. By the way, he had it wasn't just walking through the Alps. He actually has a bunch of battles through the Alps too, and he gets through there pretty dang well. And when he enters into the Po River Valley of northern Italy, there's all those Gallic tribes and kind of former Etruscans up there too that have always just been like, wait a minute, you're here to basically mess up the Romans? We might as well join you. So he gets a lot of help that way, which he was expecting. He was pretty sure he'd get help from kind of the disaffected or the people that just were not happy with Rome. Rome hears about that. That actually kind of freaks them out that Hannibal all of a sudden is showing up pretty quickly, a lot sooner than they thought, on their northern doorstep. And so they get some armies together, something like around 6 to 8 legions or so, to go up and deal with them. And in the very beginning, there's some minor skirmishes that just neither side really wins. But then they have one major, I should have had that up earlier, I'm sorry. But then they have one major battle. Well, they have tons of major battles, but the first major one is what's called the Battle of the River Trebia. Now, there's some skirmish battles before this that, neither side really wins or loses. But when you get to this one, Hannibal shows that he can out-adapt the Romans. And he beats them handily, to where there's basically 2 different battles, the first and second battles of River Trebia, if I remember correctly. And those initial Roman legions are, I can't really say obliterated, but it's not one of those things like you lose the battle and kind of retreat to fight another day. Those legions aren't really coming back. A lot of those Romans get killed. So the Romans get another army together. And again, I'll try to make this long story short, but they have another big battle, Battle of Ticinus, where again, the Romans come in, they're a bit overconfident. They thinking we have a little bit bigger army this time. We won't make the same mistakes that we made at River Trebia. We'll adapt to this. And Hannibal out-adapts them and beats that army too. So another army is raised. This time basically a very hawkish general, just meaning a guy who's very aggressive. Although the Romans are a bit wary, but they put a hawkish general in charge, a consul I should say. And they get trapped. Hannibal's able to lure them into a trap where their backs are to a lake called Lake Trasimene. And this is called the Battle of Lake Trasimene. And even though the Romans had a much bigger army, because they're basically trapped against that lake, they're surrounded. This army is almost, the first 2 armies, yes, they're beaten really badly where they aren't really coming back. But the army in the late Battle of Lake Trasimene, that one is pretty much obliterated. And that was pretty bad. The Romans like, holy cow, this is really bad. So especially to lose that many of our men that way. So they get another big army together. And this one, they're like, okay, we're not messing around anymore. We're going to get those 16, 17, 18 legions together. We're going to get that 80 to 90,000 men together. And we're just going to overwhelm Hannibal. And Hannibal is sitting there with about 30 to 35,000 men at this point. This should be an easy victory. Odds are 2 to 3 to 1 here. And just, God, this is one of the more fun battles to study and to look at and read about. And I'm kind of thinking right now I probably should have done like maybe a whiteboard thing to show this, but I'm just going to be going forward with this. Just know that basically what happens here is the Romans are basically goaded into attacking the Carthaginian center. And Hannibal has troops on both the flanks waiting. This is a lot like the Battle of Marathon, at least always plays out. And at the last second, where the Romans feel like they're going to be victorious and break through and overwhelm the Carthaginian center line, their center phalanx lines, then all of a sudden these Gallic mercenaries and these Numidian cavalry come out of the woodworks on either sides of the Romans and surround them. And all of a sudden now the Romans are surrounded and they're so packed together that they can barely fight. And they're just hacked down man by man by man until they get to the very center, where out of this 90,000 men, it's thought that as little as 8,000 probably survived. Again, another complete obliteration, this time of a massive, massive Roman army. And this really has the Romans reeling. Like after 4 battles like this, or 5 battles like this one that I brought up, Trebia, Ticinus, Trasimene, and Cannae. I've always said Cannae my entire life, but I heard recently that it's pronounced Cannae. I'll just go with that. So the Battle of Cannae, by the way, considered one of the greatest battles of all time, the Battle of Cannae, because of what Hannibal does in beating this massive Roman force. But the Romans, they're still going. Like, they're still that tenacious that they're still going. Like, anybody else should be done. I mean, they should have been done after Trebia and Ticinus, and then they should really have been done after Trasimene. But the Romans, they're still going after this great military debacle that is the Battle of Cannae. and they raise another army. Now at this point they are getting down to kind of like the last dredges of their manpower, and it's not helping that a lot of these areas like Samnium and the Greek states of southern Italy are now realizing, well, do we really have to be under Roman control? And they start kind of switching sides, and which gives a lot of help to Hannibal. But the Romans decide to kind of take a different strategy now with Hannibal. Is like, wow, we have not been able to beat this guy in a head-on fight this entire time. We got to do something different. This is not working. So instead what would happen is they just trailed Hannibal. They kept a major force in Rome, knowing that Hannibal would probably not be able to take out Rome itself very well. But then they sent a major force that would never come to battle with Hannibal. They just kind of leave Hannibal alone. But every time Hannibal came into a city-state and said, you will now belong to me, and they're like, okay, well, looks like you're a winner, you'll belong to us. Then he moves on to the next one, and the Romans come into that same city-state and says, well, you should stay with us. And they're like, okay, I guess we'll stay with you. So it's kind of like this idea where, you know, think of a risk board, like an army attacks one area, takes it over, and then moves on to the next one. The enemy army comes in and just takes that back, but never bringing the Carthaginians to a full-on battle again. They're just that afraid of Hannibal at this point. And this goes on for nearly a decade, this, you know, trading spots all over Italy, where Hannibal keeps trying to turn all these people against the Romans, and the Romans, through just shrewd diplomacy, intimidation, are keeping people on their side. The thing is that, remember that army I talked about that went over to Spain? Well, it was led, so anyways, I should have had that up earlier. Again, you can pause the video, look at that, but I'm just going to be moving on here. So, that army that was over in Spain is led by a young man, at least not in the beginning, but over time, it becomes under the leadership of a young man named Scipio, who later on becomes known as Scipio Africanus, the Great, you could say. Well, he beats Hannibal's brother over in Spain, and is able to essentially do to Spain what Hannibal is doing to Italy, yet he gets more control of it there. And then he comes back to Rome with a very daring plan on just how to deal with the Carthaginians. Like, you know, Rome is saying, well, we need you back here. You know, we need to face Hannibal here in Italy. He's like, nope, I think I know what we need to do. We need to attack Carthage directly. And that will force Hannibal to go back and leave Italy altogether. And if we can beat them in a battle on their home turf, that will end this thing altogether. And there was a lot of people who weren't happy about this, but he's somehow able to kind of sway the Senate and saying this is what we need to do. So, well, they decide to go along with it. So Scipio's given command of, you know, a big, huge army at this point. They're able to basically get a lot more volunteers in place. There's a lot of young men that have grown into manhood at this place that now can fight during basically the 12 years that this has been going on. And he gets over there, and this is where we come to the very last battle of the Second Punic War, called the Battle of Zama. Unfortunately for Hannibal, his one and only loss, and the most important, basically, battle probably of his time, because after this, he's just not able to come back. And the way Scipio wins this is, again, through just good adaptation and shrewd, if not kind of jerkish, diplomacy. So what happens here is, like something I didn't explain leading up to this, is that Hannibal is getting so popular with Carthage and the Carthaginian people that the ruling merchant council, I forget the name of this council, starts with the P, it just fled my mind. Anyways, I think it starts with the P. But they're getting really jealous of him. Like, this guy is like, you know, he's becoming such a hero that he could become like the new dictator or controller, king of Carthage. And they don't like this. And so this Carthaginian ruling council starts doing things to undermine Hannibal, like not sending him enough food or not sending him enough soldiers or money to pay his soldiers. That's the big one. His army is a lot of mercenaries, and they require to be paid. And all of a sudden, the only thing that's really keeping them around is Hannibal seems like a winner. So hey, winners seem to pay you in the end with the loot that they get. But so far, the Romans have been doing a good job of just kind of keeping that out of their clutches, you know, while not coming to a major battle. And all of a sudden, this merchant council, when Scipio comes with his major army down, and when they hear about him coming to their doorstep saying, oh crap, Hannibal, we love you, please come back and save us. So Hannibal has to abandon Italy, come back to Carthage to essentially face down Scipio and his big Roman army there. This is what's called the Battle of Zama. Now Scipio, knowing that a lot of these mercenaries, especially the elite Numidian cavalry, have not been paid, Scipio offers to pay them what they have not been paid so far. And because the Romans don't necessarily need to pay their armies, they have more than enough money to do this, resources and wealth to do this, to kind of switch the Numidians to their side. Now, they actually don't switch Numidia to their side. What they basically say is that in the battle, when you're asked to kind of come attack us, just leave. Just don't. And that's kind of what happens. The first thing that happens, though, is that the elephants. Like Hannibal doesn't have a lot of elephants after, I think, either Trebi or Ticinus. The last of his elephants just kind of died, but he still does good without him. But now he has tons of elephants again. That Carthaginian merchant council is like, here, have everything you need, save us. So he has these massive elephants. And by the way, if you're thinking of that big, huge battle in the third Lord of the Rings movie, Return of the King, that in a lot of ways is kind of based off of what the Battle of Zama, when Hannibal has his massive elephants just attack through the Roman ranks. Although this time the Romans adapt well. Scipio was able to mobilize his army, move them in a way. Again, that legion system is great for this. It says, all right, we're not going to be in a checkerboard fashion, like I showed you before. Everybody move into columns. And the elephants just funneled right into the columns, and they were easily taken out. They either ran themselves out of the battle, or the Romans were easily able to dispatch them because those elephants were just really going forward. Elephants are hard to control. And so the elephants all of a sudden were not a deciding factor. Hannibal's like, well, it's all right. I still have an upper hand here. I have more cavalry because of those Numidians than the Romans do. And so they get into the major battle, and when things look like that it's a good time to call that Numidian cavalry in, he calls them in and says, hey, go attack. And the Numidians don't. And when the Numidians don't, the Romans have the upper hand now, and they win this battle against Hannibal. So if Hannibal's troops would have been loyal to him, probably would have won this one. Again, I can't really say that for sure, but he's Hannibal. But with that disloyalty, or the idea of like that disloyalty was built over time because the merchant council wasn't giving him the money to pay his mercenaries, those Numidians basically turn away from him. And that's it. Carthage is done for at that point. Hannibal escapes this. He doesn't die at this point, and he flees. And for the rest of his life, he tries to keep telling everybody out, and especially the Greek city-states, hey, these guys are going to be a problem. The Romans are going to be a problem. I know how to beat them. I've done it before. If you need me, use me. And there's actually a point where there's actually a war between the Greek Seleucid kingdom and Rome later on, where Hannibal is like, use me, and they don't. They have him do these little things with a minor army in the southern part of the Aegean Sea, and they don't let him kind of go up against the Romans. And it's one of those big wonders, like if Hannibal was given command of those Greek armies, those full Greek armies, what would have happened at that point? Anyways, it's a huge what if that we'll just never know about, because the Seleucid king just, he dropped the ball on that one. So, unfortunately for Hannibal, Roman assassins do catch up to him at some point, especially after that big war with the Greeks, which the Romans win, and Hannibal commits suicide before the assassins take him out. Now, I just found this as I was researching things, but apparently that's basically the face of Hannibal carved into stone, and it's like a gravestone marking his burial spot. I don't know if that's true or not, but it was interesting as I was reading about it, so I included the picture here on the PowerPoint. So, anyways, I probably should have had this up earlier, but it was for the next 10 years, Hannibal seeks to convince Eastern kingdoms in Greece and Asia Minor. That's what I just talked about, the Seleucid Greek kingdom. Or was it the Antigonid? No, it was the Seleucid. So, but he ends up finally committing suicide just before the Roman assassins get to him. Anyways, and that's the end of Hannibal. Now, at that point, Rome, after the Second Punic War, Rome is now definitely a major Mediterranean power, and is easily the most powerful Mediterranean power that is. The Greeks just don't realize it yet. So with that, we'll end that here. I don't think, we don't have anything. We'll talk about the European War. Won't take long to talk about. It's quick, but we'll talk about that in the next lesson. See you guys later.